morning sunlight streamed through the dusty windows of Willow Creek's small schoolhouse. Miss Eliza Bennett, the new teacher from St. Louis, adjusted her bonnet nervously. The town had been kind, but she was shy, her soft voice and timid manners often mistaken for weakness. Today she was preparing for her first day teaching in this rough frontier town. As the bell rang, a dozen children shuffled in, dusty boots and bright faces. But one little girl sat quietly in the back, her hands folded neatly in her lap, her eyes deep and silent. Eliza noticed her instantly, the quiet child who didn't speak. When the lesson began, she realized the girl wasn't ignoring her. She simply couldn't hear. The teacher paused, walked over gently, and smiled. Then slowly she raised her hands and began to sign. The little girl's eyes widened with surprise. Her small hands trembled, then moved hesitantly to reply. For the first time, someone in this town understood her language. Outside the window, a tall man watched silently from his horse, a rancher with weathered eyes and a guarded heart. Jacob Thorne, the wealthiest rancher in Willow Creek, had seen many things in his years: droughts, cattle rustlers, loneliness. But the sight of his daughter, Lily, smiling for the first time in months, made something inside him shift. Since her mother's passing, Lily hadn't spoken a word, lost in her silent world. And now, because of this young teacher, she was laughing, with her hands. Jacob dismounted, standing by the door, unsure how to thank the woman who had reached a part of his child even he could not touch. When school ended, Eliza turned and found him waiting by the fence. "You must be Lily's father," she said softly. He nodded, removing his hat. "Jacob Thorne," he replied in his deep Western drawl. "I can't thank you enough, Miss Bennett. You've done more in a day than doctors did in years." She smiled, brushing dust from her skirt. She's a bright girl. She just needed someone to listen, in her way. Their eyes met for a heartbeat too long before Jacob looked away, clearing his throat. "I'd like to repay you somehow." Over the next few weeks, Jacob began stopping by the schoolhouse after lessons. At first it was to check on Lily, but soon it was something more. He would lean against the fence, watching as Eliza taught his daughter with patience and warmth. She wasn't like the other women in town, no loud laughter or painted smiles. She was quiet, kind, and strong in ways words couldn't describe. When she smiled, the world seemed a little softer. For a man who had known only loss and responsibility, she became an unexpected peace. One evening, as a thunderstorm rolled across the plains, Eliza stayed late grading papers. The wind howled, rattling the shutters. Just as lightning struck nearby, the door burst open. Jacob stood there, soaked and breathless. "I came to make sure you were safe," he said. Eliza blinked, surprised. "You rode here in this weather?" He nodded. "Didn't want you alone out here." The storm raged outside, but inside the small schoolhouse, warmth bloomed between them, unspoken, tender, undeniable. They sat by the lantern, talking softly until the storm finally passed. The next morning, whispers spread through town. The rancher and the schoolteacher had spent a night together, innocent, yet the gossip twisted it cruelly. Eliza lowered her head as she walked through the market, the sting of judgment heavy on her heart. Jacob heard the talk too, and his jaw tightened. That evening he rode into town and stood outside the saloon, his voice cold and steady. "Anyone who speaks ill of that woman again will answer to me." The room fell silent. Respect was earned fast in the Wild West. Weeks passed, and the bond between Eliza and Lily deepened. The little girl would run into the classroom each morning, her hands flying with joy. Eliza taught her words, not with sound but with meaning. One afternoon, Jacob arrived early and saw them laughing together. Eliza looked up, signing to him. "She's doing well." He tried to imitate her signs clumsily, and she laughed, a sound pure as birdsong. It was then Jacob realized he wasn't just watching his daughter heal, he was healing too. That spring, Jacob invited Eliza to his ranch. She hesitated, but agreed. The Thorne Ranch stretched wide across the prairie, endless grass, cattle grazing, sunlight spilling over rolling hills. As she watched Lily run free, laughter silent but alive, Eliza felt peace settle in her chest. Jacob stood beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. "You've brought life back here," he said softly. She turned to meet his gaze. "I think it was always here. It just needed someone to see it." His smile was small but real. The days turned to months. Eliza became part of the town, teaching, smiling, quietly changing lives. Yet deep down she feared the walls around Jacob's heart. He was kind but distant, gentle but haunted. One evening she found him alone in the barn, staring at an old photo of his late wife. "She'd want you to be happy," Eliza whispered. Jacob's voice broke. "I don't know how." She stepped closer. "Then let me teach you. The same way I taught Lily, one sign, one day, at a time." That night, under a sky full of stars, Jacob reached for her hand. He didn't speak, he simply signed, slowly and unsure. "Thank you." Tears welled in her eyes. "You're welcome," she replied in signs. For a moment, the silence between them was no longer empty. It was sacred. The Wild West was full of noise. Gunshots, thunder, rough men. But this quiet was something neither had ever known. It was love unspoken but alive, written not in words but in hands and hearts. By summer, everyone knew. The rancher who once lived alone now came to town with the schoolteacher and his daughter. They weren't flashy or loud, but their presence warmed the town like morning sun after a cold winter. Lily's laughter, silent but radiant, became a symbol of something pure. Love reborn in unlikely places. The three of them would often sit by the creek, Eliza reading, Lily signing, Jacob listening in peaceful silence. For a man once trapped in grief, it was nothing short of a miracle. One afternoon, Jacob rode to the schoolhouse carrying something in his saddlebag. When Eliza stepped outside, he dismounted, holding out a small wooden box. Inside was a silver locket with her initials engraved. "Eliza," he said softly, "I ain't good with words, but I know this. I don't want a single sunrise without you in it." She covered her mouth, tears shining. "Jacob." Before she could reply, he took her hands gently and said, "You taught my daughter how to speak again. Now let me learn to love again." Their wedding was small, beneath an old oak tree on the Thorne ranch with Lily as the flower girl. The whole town came, even those who once whispered behind her back. As they exchanged vows, the prairie wind blew soft and sweet. When the preacher said, "You may kiss the bride," Jacob leaned in, smiling through tears. Lily signed joyfully, "Family." The crowd clapped, and even the roughest cowhands wiped their eyes. The sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky gold and crimson, as two lives finally became one. Years later, travelers passing through Willow Creek would speak of the Thorne Ranch, a place known not just for its fine cattle, but for its kindness. A shy teacher who found her courage, a grieving man who found peace, and a little girl who spoke through her hands. Together, they proved that love doesn't always need words. Sometimes it just needs someone willing to listen. And when the prairie winds whispered through the tall grass, it carried their story, soft, timeless, and forever kind.